Hey y'all, Chef IrixGuy here, back again, and today I'm going to make homemade chili. Now, trying something for the first time today, and by the way, you can expand this video's description and then click the link there to find this seasoning as well as other varieties too. But this is Kinder's, or possibly pronounced Kinder's, I think it's Kinder's, chili seasoning. And this is the Woodfired chili. So before we get started, I'm going to explain everything we need. I've got a pound of ground chuck. I've got 1 cup of water. Now I may actually add a little bit more water because I like my chili a little bit less thick, personal preference. Then I've got a 15.5 ounce can of kidney beans, a little bit more than it calls for. It calls for 15 ounces. And then I've got a 14.5 ounce can of diced tomatoes, and those are undrained. I didn't drain the can of tomatoes. So what we're going to start with here, I'm going to fire up my stove. Fire up my stove here, and we're going to cook the ground beef. Now, something that the recipe on the Kinder's doesn't call for, and that's something I like. They didn't try to make this overly complicated, but you know, I'm one of these. I like the extra refinement. So I've chopped up 1 onion, and I've chopped up several cloves of garlic, and I'm going to put those in while I cook my my ground chuck. It's just going to add extra flavor profile to everything. So it's going to drop these all in there, and let's see. Don't want to let any of them go to waste, because this is the difference between a good chili and something that's really, really good. Because obviously these onions and these chopped up pieces of garlic clove will be in the chili once I get to that phase. So let's see, let's go ahead and get those in there. I should have put it in a bowl. I'm just lazy. I got it on the cutting board. Who cares? Do it like you want to do it, man. Don't, you know, I don't have to be on here putting on some sort of professional cooking show, even though the results are going to blow your mind. So I've got my 1 pound of ground chuck, and if you really want to take a shortcut, and I've got a really good butcher, but if you wanted to take a shortcut, you could just get some burgers, some hamburger patties. Just make sure you get the ones that are good quality ground chuck, and that can, you know, you can get to 1 pound of ground chuck that way, versus going to a butcher and saying, hey man, you know, I need a pound of ground chuck. Now that's what I did. I went to my butcher. I just said, yep, you need a pound of ground chuck. Like, well, you know, what are you making? Well, I'm making this Kinder's chili for the first time. Like, oh, you know, that sounds good. So, but yeah, while you cook this, you just kind of want to, because typically when you get ground chuck, it's going to come in a, you know, kind of like a big burger type style. So you want to cut through it here, because you don't want big chunks. You just kind of want to move it around as you cook it, and you know, it's going to start to get that coloration. Obviously, you've got to cook your ground chuck before you start making the chili. People that don't cook, or just learning how to cook, may not realize that you know, you've got to cook that ground beef or whatever you're using. You know, this would also be really good with a brisket. Now, you know, that'd be a slow process, because you'd have to smoke your brisket overnight and then cut it up for your chili. But I want to do that one time. Brisket's so good. But man, this with ground chuck is going to be really good. You could use ground beef. If you don't know much about meat, ground chuck is just a tier above ground beef. You could even use, if you wanted to, you could use, a lot of butchers will have what they call steak burgers, which basically they'll get, you know, as they go through their week cutting up steaks, all of the trim, they'll take that and make a steak burger grind. So, you know, you could use something like that instead of ground chuck or ground beef. You know, again, personal preference. But you can see how all of this is blending together here. Again, the onions and the garlic were not called for by the Kinder's recipe, and again, I appreciate them keeping it simple, because a lot of times if you buy these spice packs, you know, you're doing it for a reason. You know, you don't want to have to go out and buy all these new spices for your spice cabinet that you may not necessarily use a lot. So it's nice being able to just get the mix for the meal that you're preparing. You know, again, in this case, it's going to be, they call it wood-fired chili. But as I mentioned earlier, it calls for 1 cup of water once we get to putting it in the chili pot. But I will, as I mentioned, I'll probably add a little bit more just because, you know, I like. There's 2 reasons that I like a chili that's not as thick. Number one, if it's thicker, you don't have as many bowls of chili. So, you know, that's one reason. And then the other reason is just, you know, personal preference. I like a thinner chili. And, you know, you can always add, you can throw some crackers, or if you call them saltines, whatever you call them, you can throw those in there. You can put some cheese on the top. You could toast some bread and crumble it up in your chili. You wouldn't have to put anything in your chili. And again, as I mentioned, expand this video's description and click the link there to find the link to the Kinder store. You know, this is just one of many seasonings they've got. This is the chili seasoning, wood-fired chili. But they've got so many other varieties, and not just chili seasoning. I mean, they've got all kinds of seasonings. So if you like to cook, or you're just learning to cook and you need a quality shortcut, I mean, this is when you can get a kit and not have to buy the individual spices, because spices can get expensive, especially nowadays, man. Everything's expensive, but okay, so that is enough. I'm going to turn my gas stove off here, and we're going to sit this right here. We are going to drain this, so just want to drain the fat out of the beef, out of the chuck. Perfect. So I got that like I want it. Now we're going to put this in our pot here. I'm just going to use the same cooking surface here. I've got 4, but this one just because it's close. So we're going to put this in there. Again, I drained the fat out, or most of it at least. Get all that goodness out of there. Now what we're going to do is we're going to follow the directions on the we're going to follow the directions on the Kinder seasoning mix. So we're doing stovetop. You can use an Instapot for this as well, which is pretty cool. But we're going to use stovetop. We're going to add 1 pound of ground beef. We've already done that. Add Kinder seasoning. So we're going to add this entire pack. Very nice. It peeled off. Didn't have to use scissors or a knife. Oh, this has a really good color to it. Kind of a reddish color. Oh, it smells good too. See if y'all can see that. It's kind of a reddish color. So we're going to add that. We're going to add 1 cup of water. I'm going to start off with 1 cup of water. but I may actually add, then we're going to add the 15 ounces of kidney beans. These are dark red kidney beans. To add those. These kidney beans, I did drain the kidney beans. So keep that in mind. But when I add the 14.5 ounce of diced tomatoes, I did not drain these. So these have the juice in them. Kidney beans were drained, diced tomatoes were not. Now, as I mentioned, it called for 1 ounce or 1 cup of water. I want it thicker, and I can tell after adding that. So I'm going to actually add another cup of water and see what this looks like. Yeah, that's the consistency that I prefer. So now we're going to bring this to a boil. Start my stove back up there. Yep. Stove going here, so we're going to stir this. And we're going to bring it to a boil. It sounds crazy, man. I'm actually going to add even a little bit more water. So you do what you want to do. I mean, I think their idea of chili is different, and that's fine. But you know, I want it thinner. Okay, now that's definitely the consistency that I want. Oh yeah, that's what I want. Now, I wouldn't want to add any more water for my personal preference, because then it would, you know, it would become runny. But this, after this comes to a boil and simmers for 20 minutes, it's going to be the perfect consistency. Oh yeah, that's going to be good. I just kept looking at it, and it was bothering me that it was not. I don't want to say watery as in runny, but it wasn't. It was too thick. It was too thick for my personal preference. So I even do that when I'm really slumming it, and I get just a can of chili at the grocery store. When I cook that, I'll add water to it, but then I'll go back after I add the water to the canned chili. I'll add chili powder to make up for the lack of seasoning, because I diluted it. And I'll probably have to, we'll just see how it tastes once this is done, but I'll probably have to add possibly a little bit of chili powder to this because I did, as I mentioned, I added extra water for the consistency. So let's see here. Shouldn't take too long to start boiling here. And as soon as it starts boiling, you're going to want to reduce to a simmer, and then let it simmer for 20 minutes or so. So this is the finished product, the consistency of the chili. You can see, as I mentioned, I like it a little bit more watery than thick consistency. So you can see that is absolutely amazing. Hot out of the pot. I'm going to put some shredded cheese on it, put a few crackers, saltines down in there, and I'm going to go at it and tell you what my opinions are. So the finished product looks absolutely amazing. I went ahead and added some shredded cheese and saltines to it. It's cooled down enough to where I can take a bite. So let's take a bite here and see what it's like. Oh man, this seasoning, and again, you can expand this video's description and click the link there to find where to order it online. it's a very good flavor profile. You know, if you're like me, you've been to the grocery store and you've gotten some chili seasoning mix brands that have been around for many years. Some of those are pretty decent, but this is unique. Just a really wonderful flavor profile. And even though when you saw, as I was cooking this pot of chili, I did add a little bit more water than they recommended, but for most people, even if you choose to add additional water, the spice level is probably going to be fine, unless you like really spicy stuff. I find the spice level to be fine. I like really spicy stuff, but this has such a good flavor, I don't really need to add any ghost pepper or anything to it to just make it insanely spicy. I mean, this is a spice level that probably most anybody would be comfortable eating. But yeah, the flavor of this is wonderful. I highly recommend it. Thanks for your viewership. Be sure to subscribe, ring that bell, and that'll notify you whenever I post another video. Y'all have a good day. Hey y'all, Captain IrixGuy here. I hope y'all enjoyed this video. If you did, please be sure to subscribe. It's youtube.com/IrixGuy. And ring that bell icon when you do to be notified whenever I post another video. Thanks for your viewership, and y'all have a good day.